All right, welcome to the Breaking Boundaries podcast with Baron. Here today, you're joined with our co-host, which is Tumai as well. The podcast where we go into unraveling the mysteries of life, talking about real lived life experiences, and really just adding value back. Today, what we're going to be focusing on is the 4P systems. We have prosperity, which is all about growth, financial growth, personal growth, that type of stuff. The next one is about perspective. And, as we journey through life, we're going to look at the different perspectives that we take when we look back and go, in hindsight, so many moments where that's happened in life. And power is the third P. To me, that's all about feeling in your strength, being your great physical self and, the energy that aligns with that and enabling you to, I guess, achieve and break through other levels of boundaries through life as well. And the last one's really around purpose. We come to that time in life where we realize, what am I doing with myself? I've been doing this for so long and it's not even making me happy. So, a lot of people struggle with purpose. So today we're not really sure where we're going to focus on, but for me and my brother, Tuma, we're going to catch up and just talk. And I'm sure we're going to hit on so many different topics. But for a moment, can we just talk about that intro? Bro, first time I actually heard that track and it brings back so many different vibes. Like when you used to stand in the middle of Maroondah Highway in Ringwood crumping. And
Cool.
we used to want to get down like tight eyes, throw a post-edit picture of tight eyes somewhere in this video at this stage, getting crump. But just the whole stages of life used to be so funny. He didn't actually realize I was going to hit him with that one, so I might catch him off guard today.
That's really funny. Thanks. What's up, everybody? It's Tumai here. Really interesting perspective that you've brought in there straight away. It's one of those times where we were just kids hanging out, mucking around. We spent most of the time outside climbing trees. Well, I know I did. Smashing windows by accident with tennis balls or cricket balls, some rugby balls, and installing neon lights into the cheapest Ford car that we could buy and trying to spray paint the interior so it was looking cool. But it was a good time to reflect on, man. So if we're going to start there, I'd like to find out a little bit about what happened to you in terms of your beginning journeys from that time. We were living in Ringwood at that time. And from what I remember, you had your first job in tinting car windows. Let's start there.
Oh, yeah, throwing it back. I mean, for me, like, that was the era when Fast and Furious came out. Fast and Furious to me is kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like the person that never dies, right? Like, we're up to Fast X now, where Fast and Furious have done everything, and they decided that the next thing is they're going to drive cars in space. But back in the day, we had the very first Fast and Furious, and we had neon lights, we had nitros going through cars, and we thought that that was something totally possible. And back in the day when we used to have subwoofers in your car, and now you go into a JB Hi-Fi and there's not even a car audio section at all. So those throwbacks are really fun. And yeah.
Was that the first time that you learned how to sell the idea of the importance of tinting car windows?
Yeah, well, that was it. So it was an interesting job because my first interview was, oh yeah, come and meet us. Lo and behold, that meeting was actually when they wanted me to work for that first time. It was down in Dandenong Plaza. It was for a company that will remain non-disclosed because I'm not sure about any privacy reasons. But let me just maybe reference. It sounds like Mint Professor. So if you can put that one together, you might know which company I'm talking about. But I definitely didn't say Tint Professor.
So what kind of lessons did you learn at that age when it comes to wanting to pick up your first job, start a business, pick up some skills perhaps, sometimes even just finish year 10, 11 and 12, get through, at that time it was called VCE high school. There wasn't really any perspective on going to university or furthering your education. So if there are people listening that are starting in that position, what are some golden nuggets that you'd pass on either to your younger self or even to others that are in that position?
Yeah, look, for me, one of the things that I learned, I remember standing in the middle of a shopping centre and we had one of those cars that people would look at and we're trying to stop somebody. If you're walking through a shopping centre and you see a person in the middle, you're hugging the wall furthest away from them and trying not to make eye contact with them to get through. That was me. That was me when I was about 18, 19 years old, having my very first sales job. Didn't know it was a sales job because when I first rocked up to have an interview, the interview turned into me working there all day. And I'll set targets. And, for me, it was very much out of my comfort zone. I had to push and go and talk to strangers. I had to go and interact with people that I've never interacted with before and really kind of embody someone who was confident, someone who was social, someone who had no fear of rejection, and someone who had the resilience that in the face of no, you just kept going and giving it a crack. And those are probably the four lessons that I'll take away from that. It's we talk about wearing a mask sometimes, and that term's often referred to as somebody who's completely lying or faking who they are. And some of the familiar terms that you might be used to hearing is imposter syndrome or faking it till you make it. And sometimes in these jobs that we start to do early in our lives, we start to feel like an imposter. We have to fake it till we make it. We have to find something within that drives us to do things that we're really uncomfortable with. It actually reminds me of one of those quotes. On the other side of the things that we're avoiding most is success. And because you spend so much time avoiding something or walking away from something, that's where the success is. It's actually in the hard work. So, to bring it back on track, it's actually digging deep and putting on that mask and going, okay, I'm going to challenge myself. I'm going to become social. What does a social person look like? I'm going to shake hands with people. I'm going to walk up to people. I'm going to smile and approach them. And when they say no, I'm just going to keep smiling at them and not act disappointed, even though deep inside my soul's crumbling away, right? That was one. The other one was the resilience. So when you get rejected, there's that Michael Jordan quote about all the basketball shots that he missed, didn't amount to the amount of championships that he's won. There's so many sporting quotes that come in there. So in the face of adversity, what do? Do you jump into that fight, flight, freeze or fawn mode, or do you just keep pushing through? I tend to be predisposed to fighting, but that's due to the fact that I don't like not achieving something as well. And that's just how I've been brought up and some of the things that I've gone through in life as well. Yeah.
It's fascinating because I think some of the ongoing themes for a fatherless nation, a nation that typically have high divorce rates, dads aren't around, so you end up being raised without a particular set of skills, and you're unable to anticipate and create a level of vision that's outside of yourself at that age. So really what you're left with in terms of having to grab for something to get somewhere is a set of skills that you have to develop in order to say hello to somebody, strike up a conversation, to influence or to persuade. And for my journey when it comes to selling, my one was slightly different, but all of the same themes applied, especially when it comes to one of the greatest fears in men, which needs to be overcome, which is the fear of rejection. For me, I was an introvert, and in another episode, we can go over some of the acts and the reason why, at the cause level, why that was the case. But even today, it affects me, and what you'll find is I typically don't show up for social events, and I think too large. I enjoy and I recharge my energy by being inside, and that's supported me in many ways. However, as a male and as a man, typically, if you look at all of the men that leave a legacy, they've always been conquerors. And they conquer either the ability to protect their family, they conquer fear of rejection, or they conquer something larger outside. They conquer countries. Heck, they get on boats, they sail to somewhere. They have no idea what's waiting for them on the other side. So your ability to anticipate, lead, sell and influence other men around you is extremely important as a 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old. And for me, I started my influential journey, leadership journey, and relationship with fear of rejection at the ripe old age of about 22. I bought a course that was about $5,000 to $6,000, maybe it was $7,000, we had like a bunch of US American guys. They would fly over and teach, really, at the end of the day, men how to be men and how to lead, right? So if you can imagine with me, a young boy at 22, not knowing how to strike up a conversation, socially awkward, introvert in terms of personality, right? And these traits would directly impact my ability to strike up a conversation with a beautiful young woman anywhere in the bar or in a club. Now, in the space of 3 days of training and consistent action, constant rejection over a weekend, I managed to not only develop the skills, but also almost deepen my relationship with rejection. And once I could increase my ability to say hello, use a pickup line, transition off a pickup line, generate comfort, and then begin to enhance my ability for kinesthetic interaction, maybe perhaps introduce any sort of seduction, not only did I feel happy about my own personality, about what I could achieve and that I could break through something, but I deeply feel like the women at that time felt safe by speaking to someone who could lead a conversation. And that's applicable for us when we speak to anyone, when we go raise capital, open up a business, make a sale, persuade children why they should go to bed on time. All of these skills are important, and you're going to meet or be looking in the face fear of rejection, fear of judgment, all of these foundational parts. And it's really important why the foundation of prosperity, of power, of purpose that Baron is talking about here, and why these are important for men, is because they're really the linchpin. They not only open up your lens and perspective, but it also allows, what we've noticed is every time we talk or coach to any other men, they're always on the topics of prosperity. They're always on our ability to change our perspective or our lens. They're always on being comfortable with the fact that you're powerful. Like, it's really important that men are vicious, that they have a good relationship with fighting, that they have the skills to protect. It's almost like having the ability to sharpen your sword, to use your sword, but most of the time have it sheathed and available there, knowing that you can use it, but you hardly ever have to pull it out. Really, really important concepts for men to understand. Yeah, I would love to hear your perspective on that.
It seems like we're talking about a few different topics here, which is super interesting. It's really around overcoming your limiting beliefs that we all have, and every single person listening to this podcast, every single person around your network right now has some sort of limiting belief, okay? Conquering and being better than you were yesterday. But I think the step before that is having a level of self-awareness. And, there's another thing that you just brought up as well, is that, men being masculine. And in this modern day of men being in their masculine, we have this concept of, masculine toxicity. You've got things such as, what is the word that I'm looking for? Where the toxic, the Andrew Tates of the world. Let's call it that. The Andrew Tates of the world come up, and we misogyny. Misogyny is the word that keeps popping up, right? And I want to highlight the difference between men understanding what their power, being in their power and being strong and being vicious is, which is very different for any females, any ladies, anyone who identifies as female listening to this right now. There's a big difference between being vicious and then being violent. And I want to highlight that. It's about having control of your power and understanding what your power is. But, just on the other side of the hardest thing that you think you're willing to overcome right now is success. And there's that other saying in the world at the moment that another level, another devil. So as you start to elevate and grow in your personal development, you start meeting a new thing. And that new thing is something that also needs to be overcome. And as you continue to overcome, what you actually start doing is start stepping into your masculine, which is the viciousness that you were, partially highlighting. That viciousness is having the drive to better yourself and continually grow. And I think when we hear these words about men being men and men being vicious, we all of a sudden think of violence, which is not always that case. It's actually by grabbing life by the balls, let's just say it, and not really letting it get you down and just overcoming.
I think it's important also to mention here when it comes to the perspective of the society level, if we have what they do know in the studies is that when you have a group of weak men walking around, what typically happens is weak men can own, even at the weakest level, women. And when we say own, we can also refer to slavery, but also they tend to have, there's a personality called the Joker in terms of archetypes. And the Joker archetype is really interesting to look into. But a Joker is, when applied to a male, is a male that has the tendencies or the ability to replicate, duplicate, or to show male traits when in actual fact they've never done anything male in their life. For example, there's a lot of men that pretend like they've gone to war. Now, the reason why they do that is because it gives them a position in hierarchy, a higher position than other people, and it allows them to control more people. It is quite narcissistic, it is self-centering, but the weakest of men are doing this. And why it's so important to have even just one powerful male in a village is because that male will be able to straight away tell that that person is a pretender, that they are a joker, and they'll be able to protect the women in that area. So there's this balance that goes on, and why we need more powerful men is because men that actually get things done, that don't talk about it, they be about it, they do about it, they are able to call out the pretenders and actually keep the entire society or village safe because they know what a alpha male or a king would walk around, talk around, and look like just by their action. So I want to point that part out. When we have a relationship with violence, or when we say violence, double check the lens and the perspective to which you see it as, because a lot of men or pretenders out there pretend to be violent. Most actual powerful men don't even need to show it at all. They're just silent and stoic. So that's a perspective there too.
Yeah, it's all show, no go, that type of stuff. And it's really interesting, when we look at, some of the, the world's most vicious athletes, and we're going to, move across to combat sports here for a moment. Outside of the ring, outside of their job, which is, going and competing against another person who's arguably trained as much as what they are, they're completely humble. And there's so many things to go with here. Like, I feel like one of the questions going through your mind if you're listening to this podcast, or if you've tuned in and you're watching this on YouTube as well, you might wonder to yourself, what qualifies you to speak about these topics? What are some of the things that you've done, Baron, and to kind of go through that? And I'm thinking now we probably just need to slow it down and do a little bit of an intro as to some of the journey through life, So for me, where do I start? I haven't even thought about this part. When it comes to combat sports, I've been a professional fighter. I've had over 150 fights in a boxing ring competitively against somebody. Now, they were arguably at various different levels. Professional boxer, professional kickboxer, professional mixed martial arts. So had plenty of training. Prior to that, I played rugby for Victoria. High level of sporting background. But then outside of that as well, from a professional perspective, I've also done a lot of things with business. So then when we start talking about money and business, there's plenty of stuff to talk about there. And I'm not going to go too far down that path right now. When it comes down to perspective, which is really around mindset, mindset and some of the things that I've done with that as well. From an early age, you heard Tumai talking about a sales course that he invested in as well. And for me, a lot of mine started with personal development and growth around some of the early mentors like Darren Hardy, listening to Tony Robbins, Unleashing the Beast Within, engaging in courses like neuro-linguistic programming, helping from a life coaching perspective, rewire neural pathways to help people reform new habits and change their life. Those are one of the things that I hold dearly and close to my heart. But all these topics kind of circulate back to, I guess, the rounded view that we talk about today in today's society. So, if you are wondering around some of the things that we've done, this is only a brief little view behind the curtain, a brief little peek, because there's plenty more to come around some of the things that we've done. But you judge it for yourself. You judge whether what we say is what we say rather than what we do and the actions that we take. There's a difference between being able to recite a book and talk straight through something, because the only way you can talk straight through it is because you've lived it. You've been there in the wars in a boxing ring, and you've been outside of a boxing ring, you know the work that goes into it. So, you be the judge of that yourself. So,
I was at the gym the other day with a good friend of mine, and he wanted to do a little bit of boxing, and probably didn't expect for me to bring the wraps, the gloves, no pads, and just to box almost like sparring, but not really, because it's quite comfortable and you learn a lot more when you can work with a human body versus punching a bag. And, he had all these stories to tell me about this street fight and that street fight. And when he went to his first boxing class, the teacher pulled him aside and said, "Hey, have you done boxing before? Because the way that you move." And, love the guy, great conversation. And we always catch up and go to the gym together. And for the second time, he was saying, well, let's just do it this way. Let's do it that way. I said, no. I've done the boxing, so I'll just do it the way that I do, and you just follow. So a few minutes in, he gets puffed out and starts to kind of make all of the excuses in the world. So just first off, if I pause there, you don't want to be that guy that's telling all the stories, and then when the gloves come on, there's nothing to show for it, number one. But number two, and not that we're being violent, where I was just catching punches and we're just kind of just moving and dancing almost. The second part here is he said something very telling to me, and I recorrected him and for other guys, I would recorrect you. He was telling me about a street fight, and he said, too, I'm not normally violent like this. I'm not vicious at all. It's not in my personality. And I stared through his soul and said, I am vicious. I am violent. I have those capabilities, and I'm comfortable with that. And you should be too. And there was a moment there where he stopped telling his story and he realized kind of the power that was coming through in that, and that when times are easy times make soft men. And when times get hard, it makes really hard men. Now, not sure if you've noticed, we were about to talk about business. Baron brought it up before, but we're actually economically, we're in a recession right now, right? Any true indicator would tell you that we're in a recession. Not only that, there are wars going around in the world that just aren't directly you're not looking directly in the face of a war, right? So I ask you, when there are wars and when there are really trying times, who's going to protect the children and the women? Because one thing for sure, there's not going to be anything about gender, this toilet, that toilet, feminist, like we're all equal pay. It's just going to be who's protecting me, who has the skills and the competence to protect women and children. So I would challenge all the men that are listening that the invitation here is for you to be comfortable with your power. You've been God-given testosterone and a very strong body to have the ability to protect our women and our people here. So when we're in that moment, he realized, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. And some might even call me out and say, like, that's a little bit imbalanced. But I would say, I hang around with quite a few ranges of cultures, from a lot of different Asians, Singapore, Malaysians, all the way through to Filipinos, through to Italians, to Greeks, to those from the Middle East. I have a wide range, and I have a lot of American friends. And you know what? The common theme across all of it is we have found that we've been emasculated, that the new normal for men to be is we have to ask for permission, or we have to apologize first before we do something wrong. Gone are the days when we used to just conquer. Like, conquer your bedroom, make your bed, conquer and become excellent at the first business task that you do. Become excellent in the meeting that you have to hold. Command and take lead of people that are looking to you inside of your business or inside of your team or inside of your sport. This is what we mean by vicious, having some violence in you or having that natural anger to fuel you. You can also use it in sport and many other parts of your life that you put your focus and your potential and your desire into. So that's the point that I want to make here.
Those guys are funny, right? You're in the gym, so much talking, and then you put the gloves on. Like, I 100% right now can step into any gym, any fighter, and hold myself for 3 rounds, right? But that's because I've conquered the hard work. I've gotten to the stage where I'm and in a place where I've got the skill set and competency to be able to handle myself. What's next? And that's really what we're talking about here is you've got awareness of something. Okay, this particular part of me, I'm not so good at, I'm going to put the work in. Now that I've conquered that, and in your instance, you might have conquered violence, okay? You've conquered violence. You've now got what I call mastery of violence. And then the next stage of mastery of violence is just being able to control and use it. And then what's the next problem that I'm going to overcome? Okay, that's the grunt that we're talking about here. That's the masculinity we're talking about here. And we're dealing now with a world where there's no masculine men, there's a void. And when there's a void, someone needs to fill that. And last I checked, there's only two. So when there's no masculine people stepping into that masculine energy, it's filled by the females and the feminine energy. And then you have overpowering, overstrong, overbearing, and these are just terms I've heard. I'm not calling them or labeling them that now. Relationships where you have a man, a traditional relationship, and a woman, and the woman is more driven. She's the one going through personal development and growth. And then the man feels emasculated and they don't feel in their power. They feel like there's a power imbalance, and then they have self-esteem issues. And this self-perpetuating problem will continue throughout society until it's overcome. And when you can overcome that, you start to balance the scales. But, you want to talk about universal laws for a moment. There must always be balance. There has to always be balance. And whether that balance is filled by a man or a female, it doesn't matter. There's always going to be balance there in any energy and in any relationship. So,
yeah. And to add on to that, like typically what you find that if there is a female by gender playing more of a masculine role or a masculine energy to the relationship, the feminine still has to be filled in terms of a role. So you find that the male kind of finds their secondary seat. And because it's not natural, it becomes very difficult and you end up having to strive against the grain, I would put it, or you're no longer in alignment with what is natural for you. And so I think a lot of the time that's when it comes to like a lot of confusion when it comes to gender, because really the roles have been mixed up here. Now, there is a perspective when it comes to the patriarchy and how it's been settled. But, how many times, to be clear here, if you want to have a society filled with women, if you want to have a society with a matriarchal system, then go to an island and build Amazonia yourself. But that's the problem. You'd have to pick up a hammer and actually build it. And all of a sudden, you've got masculinity again. So there's always going to be a balance when it comes to, again, I love talking at the society level and really pulling it out. Now, I'm going to talk about another society in this situation and the key role of my personal experience or learning when it came to roles themselves and culture. Not too long ago, I really tapped back into my roots, and we can tie this into identity as well, but I learned the importance of who I was and where I was from, what mountain I was from, the land, my river, my boat, and I learnt my language. And it was a real beautiful thing. And for a lot of guys, and why I bring this up is because you need to understand where you have come from in order to know where you are going. If you're unable to articulate your ancestors and who you are at the root level, like on this earth, where have you come from? Then you're lost, just spinning on a round ball, unable to articulate and understand which direction is to go next. Now, another perspective on this is a lot of the time people say that there is trauma at the ancestry level. Well, I would say to balance that argument, when we have a whole lot of masculine men walking around or even feminine men walking around, to balance it, I find that as soon as I knew who I was, my roots, and where I was from, at the same time, yes, we can understand that trauma is passed on through the birthing process, but you can understand who you are and where you've come from, and that is going to define where you need to go. You can continue to close cycles off and heal a lot of that, because healing trauma isn't just between relationship of brother and sister, cousin, mother, uncle, and auntie. It's actually in the dirt. It's in the earth. It's how we sing to Mother Nature. It's the songs that we've written. It's the stories that we pass on. There is so much there. And when I realized as a male that my role was to protect, to sit exactly here. And when there is a funeral, this is the process. When I learned that men do it this way and they use these weapons and they sing these songs, this whole experience I had of like, oh my gosh, it's like a homing, a place feeling home. Like my identity really allowed me to ground myself and take power back and say, yep, that is who I am. Those are my chiefs. Those are my leaders. And I was going to Kapahaka school or a traditional Te Reo Māori school. I was learning a little bit about my background. Both Ariki and I, Baron and I, are from New Zealand, from Aotearoa, and I got to learn my language and sing my songs. And I would also invite any other men, if culture is something that's not present in your life, that's another place to explore, to find what your role is, where you're from, who you are, so you can understand where you need to lead. So really, really cool topics. And that's a personal story that's just been moving through me for the last couple of months.
Yeah, interesting share about your roots and your connection to your what we call whakapapa, or your understanding as to where you've come from. Recently, I've had the chance and opportunity to reconnect with a cousin that I grew up with in Australia, and then we kind of went our separate ways and did life. And we were talking about how he is. And for me, I've always, wanted and I've been interested to understand who he is and some of the things or his mannerisms. But then he openly brought it up and he said, sometimes I feel like this and sometimes I feel like that. And I know we're talking about masculine and feminine. We're talking about men and females. We're talking about the current societal structures as the main social issues, which is, a little tongue-in-cheek here, which toilets to use, right? But in conversations with him, he spoke about how our people, and we're talking about Māori people here, have always had a place for those people who have felt, a little bit feminine and a little bit masculine, mainly leaning towards either sides. And I found that a really interesting conversation to have with him because I'm getting it from the perspective of a person who feels a bit more fluid with how he identifies. Totally fine. One of the concepts that he spoke to me about, which I'd be really interested to hear from you about, man, he said that European or colonization introduced religion, and religion had a hard line that said you have to be either a man or a woman. And, when we look at the Bible, I'm not sure if it said you have to be a man or a woman with your genitalia that dictated what gender you are. But we've been talking about energy here. We've been talking about masculine energy, feeling in your purpose and making sure that you're conquering and you're going into a place where you're vicious but not violent and having control. Is it a place, and this is a question maybe for conversation, is it a place now where it's not necessarily about your genitalia, it's more so about your energy and understanding what energy you bring to the equation in society? I'll leave that open to you, bro. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, good one. So to clarify, we've got the Bible, the Holy Bible, that would say that there are defined roles, and we can talk about the defined roles in a minute. But then before Christianity was to hit mainland New Zealand, then that idea was introduced into the culture, and therefore it had a certain level of impact. But prior to that, there was always fluidity when it came to the roles, including roles and gender. Is that me clarifying correctly?
Yeah,
I'm on the same page?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. So first off, the part that we need to have here is that there has to be, in all cultures and in all stories, there's always masculine and feminine, both a masculine charge and a feminine charge. There was never anything in between. In all of the stories, including at the root, yin and yang, both electricity, magnetism, white and black, these colors in Taoism, all the way through to the energy systems in Sri Lanka and in India, all of them had roles of male and female. And that was important because both of these roles together were extremely powerful. Now, whether it's in the Holy Bible or not, or whether Christianity is responsible for defining man and woman, I would say that wouldn't be the case. my question that I would ask you is, in all of the ancient stories, whether it be Matariki or any of the uh, stories of serpents or dragons, do you see any gender or roles or energy systems that would play through any of these stories that are passed down before Christianity? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, interesting. Because I think it's fair to say that one sole colonization group is responsible for, a definition of a man versus a woman, right? And being allowed to fit into those two. I think when we look at those concepts that you've referred to, whether it be ancient stories or different practices, what do I see in them? I do see energy. I do see the clear definition of energy being defined as masculine or feminine or two separate. Okay, and the two cannot exist without each other. So where that lands me, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where that lands me in terms of thought. I just realized that the concept can't be defined as one group being responsible for the segregation of of people wanting to believe that they are neither man nor woman, they're fluid. It definitely can't be the introduction of the Bible. That argument in itself, as I've had this conversation, is silly. There must be more things before that, because before the Bible, what else was there? The Bible only was documented later in life before anything else, and then before that, what happened? I don't know. Yeah, so that's kind of my thought on that. Be interested to hear any viewers' thoughts on that. So please pop a comment below. If you've got any information, feel free to link me. I'm really interested to learn a bit more about that, but I'm sure it looks like there's something on the tip of your tongue.
Well, so in your perspective, it's regardless of biology.
Yes, regardless of biology.
Okay. So let's take the Christian perspective.
Yep.
When Adam was created from the dust of the earth by God and put into the Garden of Eden, it wasn't like Eve was just instantly created.
Correct.
There was a time and a period where God realized that Adam needed a mate.
Yep.
And then he took a rib from the male and created a woman.
Correct.
And it's in its direct translation, womb man
Yep.
means from man, and you've been taken from the womb of man.
Yep.
And so from there, finally, we see that Adam obviously was cast out of the Garden of Eden. Abraham came through, and then all of these sons and daughters were begat from this person to that person, generations after generations. So at what point are we going to call out the fact that there would be no Abraham and no children of Israel if there wasn't a woman?
Oh, 100%. So
Okay.
I think the
So
argument...
biology is important.
Biology is important,
Okay.
absolutely. But I think the difference between masculinity and femininity is down to, and this is coming down to the hormones and the chemical disposition within somebody and the feeling of things as well. So just because you feel a particular way doesn't necessarily mean that your biology is different and then you become a woman. Okay, so let's say I'm a man and I feel today that I want to, I feel more feminine today. That doesn't make me a woman. No. And I'm not excusing the fact that a man and a woman is required to create more seeds in this earth, as in more offspring. Yes, agree with that, 100%.
Okay, so biology is important.
Yes.
And we need to take it into account.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So then let's go back to the first argument. How do we separate the roles of a male and a female?
We have to do it by biology. But it's not, when you say roles of a man and a female, are you referring to, or help me understand in more detail what you say by roles? This is not societal roles that a man should do this and a woman should do that. Are we talking about reproductive roles or...
Yep, absolutely. And all of the other roles that are required of a man.
Yep.
We obviously, as men, we know that nothing's going to get given to us.
Hunters, gatherers.
So we have to take action.
Yep.
Become a leader.
Yep. That part I'm
gain
fine with.
success and get some, make a few kills and bring her food back to the village.
Yep.
And then for the first time, we're acknowledged as a man.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about that concept, it's really interesting because we look at what tribal setups where the men would go out and hunt because they both had the physiology to do so, the strength to do so, and also, that's pretty much it. Physiology.
So,
yes.
pause
Biology.
there. Then if you didn't have the physiological strength and you didn't have the feeling or the chemistry to do it, then what happened? You weren't given any rights to women.
You just go gather the seeds, would you? And then and bring the berries back to the village? You do all the salad? I don't know.
Okay, yeah, cool. So we're there right now. Well, typically what happens is you become an outcast in the village. Now, but that's not to say that you didn't have a role in any other culture.
And that part I'm trying to kind of hone in on, that there is still a role, but the concept introduced by...
Perfect. You've arrived at it. So we have a human lens and a perspective in one way, and we're applying and blaming Christians and the Holy Bible on a perspective and a lens that humans apply across all cultures. That if a man cannot complete his role, he either becomes outcast, or he has to find some sort of feminine role.
Other role. Yeah.
So it's got nothing to do with the Holy Bible.
Yeah, correct. It's also, okay. Thanks for arriving here. This is quite funny. Okay. Where to now? I think before, I wanted to talk a little bit about, how you spoke about excuses coming out from that boxer that came in, getting tired, blah, 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 this, blah, 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 that. Excuses, right? And recently I've come to the place in my life where, businesses just started popping off for me. And I've arrived to a place where I've just had lots of opportunities, lots of things to do. And, I gave you a call the other week and I was like, man, I've got so many things happening. Like I'm feeling overwhelmed. I don't know this, I don't know that. And I was in a state of flurry. And never in my life, just to put that into concepts a bit more, I've gone 3 full months without getting a salary because the person that I work for owes me lots of money. I've struggled, and never in my life have I made so many crucial business decisions just to keep things flowing. Never in my life have I networked with so many people that I've had, investment opportunities, property development opportunities, starting up a company, getting a podcast up and running. I've had to scale and start a company in 3 days. I just said this to my brother on the phone while I was driving here. That includes purchasing a domain, registering it with our legal entity, which is ASIC. It includes creating a marketing plan, a leadership plan, creating a social presence, and hiring somebody to work within 3 days to get up and running, right? That's a lot. And we came to a conversation point where we're like, people struggle just to make the decision to get out of bed and get started. Or people make the excuse. And when I look back on my life, I grew up in the 90s. The sound connecting to the internet was like, and you could not jump onto the internet and have a phone call at the same time. You could not have more than one computer connected. These devices now that we're recording on, capturing all this, did not exist. I was there through MSN chat. I was there through Kazaa. I was there through LimeWire. I was there through uTorrent. I was there through from MSN, Google searched Napster, all the way through to Google Chrome now that we got. And I'm sure that whenever this is being viewed in the future, there'll be something else. There is no excuse for you not to get something done with the abundance of information that's there. It only comes down to how lazy you are or how willing you are to actually put in some work. And for me, I came to the realization, and let's go back a bit further than the last 3 months. So before this, I had a steady job. I owned my own home. I had 3 children. I had meals that was prepared for me at home. Everything was comfortable. And I made this much progress across those 10 to 15 years compared to how much progress I've made in the last 3 months. Mm-hmm. And I just could not believe how much excuses that I made for myself back then. It's too hard. I've got kids. What happens if fear of failure? What happens if it doesn't work? What am I going to do with money? I haven't had money coming in my pocket from a job in the last 3 months, but I'm telling you what, money's been flowing in quite easily. My ability to go out and make money is definitely there. My motivation is on steroids at the moment. I have never And I was telling my brother, like I was up till 3 a.m. and I was just like buzzing. I had to force myself to go to sleep. Last night I was up till like 11:45. Just finished a marketing plan. Was going to start on a website, but I knew a website would probably take me through to 6 a.m. the next morning. Just stopped it. I was at the shops the other day. I went shopping. One of the girls go to me, "Oh, what are you up to for the rest of the day?" I'm like, "Oh, just working." She's like, "Oh, really?" Like judgment came out, like as if she was passing on to me that she didn't want to be working. So why would you want to be working? And I just said, "Oh, yeah, I'm working on my business, stuff I love." She goes, "Oh," awkwardly, she had nothing to say. She's like, "Oh, don't work so hard." I came home. My mum goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm working." Then she said, "What day is it?" She knew what day it was, all right? I'm going to say, she knew it was Sunday. And she also knew that Sunday wasn't a working day. But this is what I'm trying to say is that when you've got this much energy, when you're flowing in a direction that you've never flowed in before, it's like time and space collapse around you and you don't even know what day it is because it's not important to you. You don't even know where the next step is, but you know that as long as you keep moving, everything's going to work out. You feel so comfortable that everything's going to be cool, regardless of whether you've got income, everything's going to be okay. Just as long as you keep moving and the skill that you develop. And that's my level that I'm overcome. And we started this podcast by talking about, men being men. And we've spoken about, um, you know, being not violent, but being in a place where you've got control of how you are. And this is me now going, I am better than all the years of things that I haven't been able to surmount to. I'm better than even if I haven't been able to achieve it. I've reframed it and said, "Look, I'm still learning, and that's okay if I'm still learning. But I'm going to get better at learning, and I'm going to get better at it every time. Go for it. I can see."
Yeah, it's like, damn. It's like, dudes, seriously, like comfort will kill you. It will slow cook you in there just like a frog and serve you up to the next marketplace or the next person ready to take advantage of you. To put things in perspective, Artiki Barron is the type of person to arrive at a boxing class and not want to do the techniques of jabbing effectively, to doing a left hook because his stupid left shoulder becomes too tired to do the actual skill or execute what's required here. So by no means at all is he coming from any sort of great mindset. He's coming with the same level body, the same mindset that most people are given just by default. Yeah. For me, what I'd seen growing up is I saw how he executed things and I just didn't want to do it like that. So I became very quickly just this hardcore grinder. I would grind people into the ground in any sport. I'd grind me into the ground. And it just naturally translated over to business. And when we talk about cardio or somebody making boxing excuses, like Artiki's one to talk. He would train just for one punch knockouts just so he could get out of the first round because he didn't want to do cardio, to be honest. He didn't have the cardio to get out of some of the rounds, so just hit them once and then put them down, right? Now, if we grab that perspective and you really think about how the marketplace in business presents itself, it is never ending. Like you will have waves upon waves of crushing, absolute, total destruction at a level of pressure that you have never felt before. Like, no wonder they say that without a vision, the people will perish because you're perishing under this pressure. And your ability to calm the storm, to stay consistent with the jab, and be able to move and pop off and then move and reposition and move and then reallocate resources, energy, time and finances into other areas is your ability to roll with the punches. And what happens is the marketplace is like the greatest Mike Tyson fighter that's ever going to be in front of you, and he's going to keep coming at you. And also your ability to have a vision and be bigger than your excuses. The exact same conversation happened with my partner this week. Like we transferred our business income from a non-tax environment, Singapore, over to Australia. We wanted to be taxed here because we've repositioned ourselves here in Australia. And all of a sudden, like before, what happened was she didn't want to do it because she just didn't know and she didn't want to think about it. Now that we transitioned over to it and I just said, just pull the trigger and just do it, variable change had a play. And what happened to Artiki, to Baron, variable change. We just don't know until you take the action or until you put in that tight position. When you're backed up into the corner and a decision's been made and you really don't have any control, you have no other option but to roll with the punches. Variable change opens up so many other options available that were not in sight. They were in a blind spot because you're in comfort that was killing you. And the fascinating part about all of this is your ability to simply let go of what is or what was, be present in the moment and roll. And that is the entrepreneurial skill right now. And that's what you're learning. Your ability to pick up all of these skills. Like you kind of have to learn how to drop your shoulder and roll a punch, how to grab and just take a breath, how to use your footwork to get out of the corner. You're forced into these positions because your one-hit punch isn't working. You're getting smashed by Mike Tyson and you just backed up into the corner. And the reason why it is so important for men to be men, to say it as it is, for them to use their natural aggression, is because they're coming up against tigers, cheetahs, in this situation, a recession that is going to crush you and crush your family. And as soon as you make that non-negotiable, like that is a non-option, it's not even on the table, then you start to perform. All of a sudden, you know how to do your marketing, how to articulate and persuade or inspire someone to raise funds or to get paid, to sell that product. You become passionate about it. And I think now more than ever, guys are starting to become more and more kind of subdued, numb to the feeling of the cooking in the kitchen because the market is cooking you right now. You just don't want to be present with it. And I would really invite everybody to be present to the pressure that is happening right now, because the minute you accept that, allow that and let that go, you're able to perform at a whole nother level.
So there's so much information available. Everywhere you look, we've got information. We've got our phones, we've got things happening through our ears, you've got TV, you've got internet, you've got multiple streaming services, you've got information and products that get delivered to you on the same day if you type them in, and you don't have to leave your house. You know, we've got so much readily available information that I feel like we're in a space where people just overthink things because there's so much options. If I said to you, you know, you get to choose either A or B, it's easy. At the moment, you can choose the whole alphabet and still be hard, and you still can't make that decision. It's still hard and you still can't make a decision. And you know, when we spend so much time overthinking and trying to think what the first step is, that we end up not taking any action. I mean, you gave me this example a while ago where you spoke about we spend so much time thinking about if we take this step, then that could happen, this could happen, this could happen, and this could happen. But the failure to actually take the first step and getting to that place, you actually don't have that many things that could come up. You start to narrow down the options and then you become resourceful, which is you at your most truest, authentic place, right? When you're in that place where you go, okay, I'm here, and then you solve the next problem. But at the moment, a lot of people are just so scared to just take the first step. You know, for me, throughout my entire career, the problems that I had was I had problems executing. Why? Because I was scared of failure. I had problems making decisions. Why? Because I was scared of making the wrong decisions. I had problems focusing because I was so like, what's that syndrome? Shiny ball syndrome I had. Like there was something else that I wanted to get to. And what about this idea? I struggled with focus and discipline. And that happened across my career. That happened across my business. That happened across my relationships. That happened across my family. There's so many different things and different ways that showed up, you know. And as a person that might be listening into this who is maybe struggling in their career, maybe with career progression or career growth, you might be struggling with the high expectations that you set for yourself, or maybe you're wanting to develop your competence, but you're sitting on the decision and you don't want to take the next step. You know, if this is any encouragement to you, the invitation is to take one step forward and then have a look and reevaluate rather than try and think all the different steps forward first. and then go what all the options are and then try to eliminate the problems as they come. You don't actually achieve anything by sitting in that place. And you know what? If I was to sum it up into one phrase and one key point, the difference between the people that have had success and maybe you looking through this camera or me looking back on my life going, if only I did it this way, the difference between you and the person that's been successful is they've just made the hard decisions and made it work. You haven't. It just comes with a decision. And that's where we need to arrive, to a place where you're just comfortable with the decision. And be a man. And if you don't make the right decision, suck it up and problem solve it. Masculinity, we talked about it before.
That's it. You don't get to keep, I always say to people, you don't get to keep your emotions and get progress. You don't get both of those. You either get the emotion and you get stuck, or you get the progress and you are able to, with using EQ, lower the emotion and just enhance your logic. So you don't get both. You don't get progress with emotion. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, all of the things that lock you up, those are emotions moving through you, and you cannot achieve the progression at the levels and at the rate that is required based on business and the marketplace and every other circumstance, by the way, that's going to probably befall you. You don't get to keep both of them. So your ability to be silent, stoic, and still is your ability to progress. And we're about to go to a break in a minute. Last thoughts?
Oh, there's no such thing as last thoughts with me. that thought leads on to so many different thoughts, you know. If you don't have the ability, and, you know, I'll leave it on this thought, happy to take a break, but if you don't have the ability to make a decision, where does that energy store? It stores inside your brain, right? It just sits there. It weighs heavy on you. And then what you do is you create what's called stress. You create this stress because you can't make a decision. So then what do? You try and bury it. What do you bury it with? Working harder. What's the next thing? Scrolling on social media. Social media consumption, I call it. Drinking alcohol, drugs.
Shiny ball
Syndrome. You go find something else. The next thing, that's right. And that initial problem, unresolved, is going to continue to be a problem and show itself to you in so many different ways until you're ready to overcome it. And then you start having health-related issues because you've either covered it up with food, alcohol, drugs, other things like social media. Social media leads to mental health. Mental health then leads to feeling anxious, feeling depressed because you're comparing yourself to everybody else. But the root cause of it is actually your inability to make a decision. But you start to try and treat depression, anxiety. You're treating the symptom, not the root cause. And, you know, there's just so much that can be said for someone who masters themselves and masters who they were yesterday and becomes comfortable being uncomfortable and growing. You know, I take my hats off to them. You know, I look at a person like David Goggins, you know, quick little shout out to make sure that there's a post edit of me popping in a picture of David Goggins right here, who gives the craziest speeches about the craziest things that he does, but he does it to conquer himself. And then when we look at that as a leader in today's society, we look at what type of legacy he's leaving. He's got other men striving to be better. And for his children, for example, he's leaving a great example for them as well. And there's probably parents in here who are stuck in this situation as well, where they struggle to make decisions and they need their children to just, I'm going to say it, man up, to grow pair, to make sure that they lead with conviction and have decisiveness about them. Because then if you don't, then the imbalance in the relationship that we spoke about earlier tends to happen, and that void of gap of masculinity starts to be filled by the woman. And the role, as we discussed earlier, needs to always be filled. That's the thought, and that one thought goes everywhere. So we're gonna have to leave it there for that break.
That's great stuff. After the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about how limiting beliefs affect you. We're also going to talk about probably the most current or present example, David Goggins, and how he was having SOAS issues. What was happening there? How did that come about when we are unable to master our emotions? I'll unpack that for you today, and it might be applicable to any other bodily experience or emotional pain that you're having right now that's holding you back, that's keeping you stuck. Let's get into it. We're going to go for a break for a few moments, and we'll be back soon.